So much has already happened the first week of the Switch 2's launch. In today's video, I'll be going over everything when it comes to reviews, games, and even some scandals. So let's get right into it. If you're one of the lucky few that has happened to got a Switch 2, we've been having a great time with it. Reviews have been in for the Switch 2, and I think it has been universally praised, getting around 9s and 10s from like IGN all the way from Nintendo Life, and Games Radar Plus saying it's a 4.5 out of 5. With the pros being significant performance updates, premium look and feel, mouse sensor has strong potential, with some cons being the faster battery drain and then some HDR issues. And I think that con of the battery drain is by far what's staining this whole experience. If it wasn't for the battery, I think this probably could have been a 5 out of 5, a 10 out of 10 console. Especially because that there was a launch bug with the battery life indicator, it not properly indicating the correct battery level. I went over the battery situation in another video, but essentially it would say 1% and it would last for another 30 minutes. And not only that, the battery life itself isn't that great either. A game like Mario Odyssey on the Switch 2 runs about only 2 hours and 45 minutes. And the Switch Lite is 30 minutes longer than that. And the Switch OLED lasted double the Switch 2, being 5 hours and 30 minutes. So when it comes to the Switch, it is great build quality, but the battery life is something that is a stain, especially because Switch 1 games don't last longer, and that is something that I would assume would be the case. If my Switch 1 games lasted longer, that would be like, that makes sense. But they last a lot worse. Of course, I think we're going to get a refresh of the console, upgrading some internal processes and maybe even, an OLED screen. And then hopefully that would increase the battery life. But it does suck that on day one, we haven't gotten a significant boost when it comes to battery life. But honestly, the battery life seems to be the only stain. I have yet to hear a single complaint about drift. And there was some confusion about drift with Mario Kart World since it was the launch title. When you're holding the Joy-Con sideways, for some reason it automatically turns on tilt controls. And if you do not turn that setting off, you're gonna subtly actually drift from left to right when holding your Joy-Con. And there was some confusion in the public eye about that actually being drift. But it seems our worries have been misplaced because reportedly there hasn't been any issues that I've seen. I know there's been a lot of extensive testing on it as well. But the Switch 2 sales are actually crazy, selling over 3.5 million globally in the first 4 days, being now the best-selling console ever in the launch. And I think Nintendo was honestly kind of prepared. I was a little shocked. I thought this would be a lot like the PS5 and the Switch originally, but no. Honestly, I didn't even get my pre-order technically. I showed up to a GameStop the day of the Switch's launch, or actually the day before, and got a console the normal way. I then canceled my Walmart pre-order because I already had it in hand. And then actually going back out the day after, I was actually looking around, and Costco still had a bunch of Switches, and so did Target for a little bit. But now I go out there, the only store that I know of that still has Switch 2s is Costco. And I think because that's like a member-based system and there's a massive gate for people getting in, that's probably why they still have consoles. But every single time I go into Walmart or Target or even GameStop, they don't have any Switch 2s. So I'm kind of interested in when that next wave of Switch 2 stock is going to come out, because it definitely has to be before the holiday stock, I would think, or they could just be preparing for that. But it's very interesting to see that the Switch 2 sold 3.5, and it honestly would have been cool if it was 4 million. 4 million in 4 days, that'd be a million every day. But I would be interested to see the drop off. How many early adopters, how many Switches were sold in the first June 5th, and then I assume it kind of like plateaued toward the end, probably during like June 8th or 9th. It is kind of crazy because the amount of people that said that they were going to boycott the Switch 2, saying they won't buy it because of the price. And the only person I could think of sticking to his word is Moist Critical. If you guys didn't know, This is just a random clip I found on the internet where Moist Critical discusses his infuriation with Nintendo Switch 2.
Nintendo's pricing did not happen in response to the tariffs that got announced after the Direct. The fact that they're trying to sell you on game chat and only goes to show just how
TLDR, he is very frustrated about the price and said he wouldn't be getting games and is very upset about the game key cards. This is another good topic to speak of because it seems like physical games might be dying with the Switch 2. Majority of the games are on key cards and it's a little unfortunate, but for myself specifically, I'm just gonna go digitally now. And halfway through the original Switch's life cycle, I kind of completely switched to digital. I love the idea of sitting in my house and getting the game, I'm not gonna say day of, it's almost like hour of, when it just unlocks and I can play it immediately. But as you guys can see via this list, a lot of games are game key cards or even code in box, like Split Fiction. Of course, all Nintendo games are still on the cartridge, but besides Cyberpunk and Rune Factory, that's it. That is it. And looking into the future of the Switch 2's life cycle, it doesn't look any better. You know, like Hitman is a game key in cart. Like most of the game, some games are even codes in boxes. We don't know about some of them, but again, majority of non-Switch titles will just be either game key cards or codes in a box. I might do a video on this later if we have a slow news week, but it is very unfortunate. Another thing I wanted to touch on is Amiibos. I did not see a lot of hype around the Switch 2 Amiibos. The Amiibos launched alongside the Switch 2. I'm pretty sure Nintendo is gonna keep doing them, but I think it's starting to die down. I myself am probably not gonna collect any more Amiibos as well. From what I hear, a lot of other people are saying the same. They are just getting a little too expensive. The Tulin Amiibo, 30 bucks, while the Super Smash Bros. 2-pack, Pyra and Mythra, is also $30. Don't even get me started on the Street Fighter Amiibos being $39.99. If they were bigger figures like the one I have in my background, like not the Gundam, but like you have Nezuko hiding right back there, that's about like an 8-inch tall figure. And you know, same thing with Asuna and Deku and Bakugo back there. They're about 8 to 9 inches tall. Those cost me $40 to $50, not like 3 inches of plastic. There was some more patents on cards, and I'm hoping it isn't just for the Street Fighter Amiibo cards, and maybe something more interesting would come about it. But if they don't really change up the way Amiibos work and the price, I think I'm just gonna kind of drop out of that as well. And honestly, I'm actually kind of surprised about the game announcements as well. We had the game announcement for Splatoon Raiders, I think, what, 5 days into the Switch 2's launch? And this is announced to be a Switch 2 exclusive game. No Direct, but I'm still holding out hope. I think the next Direct will definitely give us a lot of hope for the Switch 2's life. I've been doing a lot of thinking when it comes to it, and honestly, I think Nintendo might be doing a Switch 1 game and a Switch 2 game in the same month as well, to release even more games to stir up the hype cycle even more, because technically, Metroid Prime Beyond is a Switch 1 game. So imagine them release a Switch 2 game in the same month as Metroid Prime Beyond. That would be crazy. Just thoughts that are kind of running through my head. And we've also had multiple reviews, and I can't talk about the Switch's launch without talking about Mario Kart World. The Metacritic kind of sits around 87 and around an 8.1. Overall, I think I kind of agree with it. It seems almost exactly like an 8 out of 10 game, maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I still think for an $80 game, we'll have to see if they announce DLC or something more that isn't paid. If Nintendo makes us pay for more content for an $80 game, I'm going to be kind of shocked. But if they like trickle in more tracks throughout the life cycle without having us pay, I'd be like, okay, $80, I understand. But if we have to pay $80 for more tracks, or if we have to pay more money for more tracks, I'm going to be a little disappointed. But 87 Metacritic for Mario Kart World, I would say I'd have to agree. But overall, I've been loving my Switch 2. I haven't really played it on the go. Don't really plan on it unless I'm going on an airplane. So the battery life doesn't really affect me. And HDR and 60 frames, or the one game that has 120 frames, is so smooth and so beautiful. I still can't get over the load times in all of the games because I still remember me streaming and I had to go grab water and I totally forgot I was playing on the Switch 2 and it just loaded instantly. And well, it didn't even get me started on like NSO and everything. I haven't really played GameCube games on the Switch 2 and probably will later, but I haven't really seen a lot of discourse on it. I almost forgot about talking about the other game on Nintendo Switch 2, and that being the Welcome Tour. I have yet to even try that, but from what I've heard, it's a pretty solid experience, a pretty good tech demo. It would be great if it wasn't paid for, and that's the sad part about it. But let me know what you guys think of the Switch 2 and how the first week of the launch has been. Subscribe if you haven't already and turn on notifications to get notified when I upload a video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys a year from now still playing my Switch 2.